I would like to talk about the concept of Ceteris Paribus. In other words, why do economists make assumptions that are intentionally false? Like, we know they're false, and yet we still build those assumptions in when we're building our models. Because Ceteris Paribus really is a tool that economists have in our toolbox for carefully thinking through problems. And of course, what does Ceteris Paribus mean? It means holding all else equal. And it's going to be a tool to do thought experiments, because economists can't really do many real experiments like scientists, like biologists and chemists can. So most of our analysis techniques are either statistical or else they're some version of a thought experiment. Ceteris Paribus basically allows us to take a really complex situation and turn down the volume on many of the different factors influencing that situation to pretend those things are being held equal, so that we can think really carefully about one element of the problem. It's helpful to think through examples, so I'm going to say that a bunch of economists are sitting around trying to figure out what makes people successful in their careers, or what leads to a satisfying and fulfilling career life, a productive career life. And we start to brainstorm all of the different things, especially things about how we raise children that might lead them to a successful career. In which case, we're going to be brainstorming parental income, peer engagement, teacher quality, intelligence, mentorship, investment in the school system, extracurriculars they're involved with. We just brainstorm a bunch of things, and probably each one of those things has some influence on a child's eventual career path. But if I'm really interested in the idea of a policy that enables extracurriculars for low-income students, for example, I might want to zoom in on that specific effect and think really carefully about everything going on with the effect of extracurriculars on a student's eventual career path. That means that I need to turn down the volume on everything else, or else my brain is going to be constantly moving back and forth among all of these different influencing factors, and I'm just not going to think about it in a very productive way. I'm going to be thinking about it in a very chaotic way, rather than a structured way. And economists love structured thinking. That's what Ceteris Paribus is about. It's about structuring our thinking to look at one factor at a time. And oftentimes, I as an economist will start to run ridiculous experiments in my head. And this is what that looks like. First, I come up with a hypothesis. And my hypothesis with extracurriculars is that there's a lot of value in going through the years-long process of learning to invest in the time it takes to practice a skill, get better at a skill, develop mental models for what makes someone good or bad at that particular skill. You might think of chess, you might think of violin, or getting good at a particular sport, or speech team, or robotics, whatever it is. A lot of these types of activities require a lot of time investment to hone your skill. And I think there's value in going through that experience, even if that's not your intended career path, so that you get a embodied intuition about what it takes to get good at something. That's just my hypothesis. So in my head, I run this experiment where I take 2,000 5-year-olds and I randomly sort them into two groups, where one group has to take up an activity, an extracurricular activity that they engage with for like the next 12 years of their life. And they get really good. And the other group, I say, you're not allowed to be involved in extracurriculars, or at least not for longer than a year. You're not allowed to go through this extended process of learning to develop expertise. And I let those kids grow up in the two conditions. I let them have their careers, and then we compare at the end of the experiment which group did better. Now, of course, obviously, you're not ever going to be able to do experiments like this. For one, that would be really expensive to incentivize this 2,000 groups of students to stay in the experiment, to give us data over the years. And it would also be a pretty authoritarian type of experiment, having a little bit too much control over these kids' lives. And that's true for most economics things we think about. Like, we can't really do experiments in this way, apart from in our heads. So Ceteris Paribus is us saying, let's pretend the kids have the same income, the same parental involvement, the same teacher quality, the same everything that might influence a student's career path after college. And let's think through what are the effects just of these extracurricular activities. And it just narrows the focus of the analysis. Now, this means making false assumptions. It means we're going to build a model, because economists build models, that assumes everybody has the same parental income, everybody has the same school quality. Essentially, our model assumes school quality doesn't matter. And that's not because we believe that school quality doesn't matter. It's because we're narrowing our focus to think carefully about one thing. One common misunderstanding of economics is that we need our assumptions to be true in order for our analysis to be true. And nothing could be farther from the truth. Our assumptions are mostly narrowing our focus so that we can think carefully about one particular topic. And then, of course, if we want to think about reality, then we broaden our focus and bring in a few different analyses. But ideally, these other analyses of these other issues that matter are going to also have been studied in a careful Ceteris Paribus controlled thought environment, so that we've thought carefully about each one when we look at the bigger picture. That's the idea with Ceteris Paribus.